I'm Paul Jones, Chief Executive of the Northern Automotive Alliance, and welcome to this morning's webinar, 3 Steps to Unlocking Investment and Skills in Robotics and Automation in the Automotive Supply Chain. And we're running this morning in conjunction with DHL and the Virtual Engineering Centre, which is a faculty of the University of Liverpool. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. Could I ask everybody to mute their microphones unless they're speaking, please? Also, we are recording this morning's webinar. And finally, there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the presentation, but feel free to drop questions into the chat box as we go along. Okay, next slide, please. I'd like to introduce this morning's speakers. We have Murray Goodrick from DHL and Andrew Levers from the Virtual Engineering Centre. Good morning, Murray.
Morning, Paul, and thanks for the opportunity today. So I'm Murray Goodrick. I lead the development agenda for our manufacturing logistics business in the UK. So yeah, look forward to sharing some ideas and thoughts with you. Andrew.
Good morning, Andy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andy Levers. I'm Executive Director of, actually it's the Institute of Digital Engineering and Autonomous Systems, but I guess the title was too long to get on the page. Hope you're all going to find some benefit from what we're going to talk about today.
I'm sure we will. Welcome, Murray. Welcome, Andy. So just to get you all warmed up this morning, we're going to have a poll question. What are your challenges? So can we bring the poll up, please, Emma? So we're going to leave this up for about a minute, so give you a chance to respond. So what are the key barriers to adoption your organisation? So multiple choice, tick as many as you feel apply. Okay, I think we've probably all had sufficient time now to answer that question. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so firstly, brief introduction for those of you who are not members of the Northern Automotive Alliance. Who are we? What are we? So simply, we provide a community for all automotive-related businesses in the Northwest Yorkshire and Humber, focused purely on the automotive sector, and we provide industry-specific support. Next slide, please. And how do we provide that support? Well, basically, in a nutshell, we help automotive companies to grow and be more profitable. And you can see here some of the ways through which we do that, through collaboration, networking, as in this morning, signposting, consultancy and project management, training and lobbying. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to hand over to Andy now.
Thanks, Paul. So the Virtual Engineering Centre really has 2 missions. It works directly with businesses of all sides, but I guess with a particular focus on SMEs to help the adoption of digital technologies. We're now in our 11th year of operation, primarily based out of the Hartree Centre in Daresbury, but also on the University of Liverpool campus. And we've delivered, particularly recently, some EIDF funded projects within city region around digitalisation, so LCR 4.0, which hopefully many of you will be familiar with, and also LCR 4 Start, which is helping businesses look at digital strategy. We've delivered many hundred projects to many hundred SMEs and larger companies, and our mission, as I said before, is both with industry to help them digitalise, but also to act as a conduit for academic research to find exploitation and create impact. I think this next slide, please. The VEC itself has become fairly recently part of a new institute in the university, the Institute of Digital Engineering and Autonomous Systems. And if you keep your eyes peeled in the new year, there'll be further announcements about the opening of a new facility on the Liverpool campus, which is the Digital Innovation Facility. But I'll speak more about that later. We do have a multi-sector focus, and we started in aerospace, helping supply chain digitalisation of businesses such as BAE Systems and Airbus. But we've made a transition into automotive, particularly more recently energy, certainly healthcare and utilities, And I think we've pretty much dealt with every organisation size, from very large multinationals to single person startups. So again, the next slide, please.
Great, thanks, Andy. Really good insights there. I just wanted to give you a quick idea of some of the scale of DHL Supply Chain within the UK. So just some key stats that we got there. So we have over 40,000 employees in the UK, about 450 customers, and we've been investing heavily in our UK transport fleet that you see on the left-hand side of that screen. So we've currently got about 77,000 vehicles across the UK. We're investing heavily into that fleet and into really green initiatives around hydrogen power, electric power, and any other alternative fuels. So I lead the automotive engineering and manufacturing part of our business, and that's sort of one key part of sort of 5 pillars in our overall UK business. So to bring that to life, typical customers that we're fortunate to have are Jaguar Land Rover, Aston Martin, JCB, Bombardier, so a real broad variety of customers that we've been fortunate to have a long-standing relationship with. We're very much from that automotive mindset and really expanding that automotive mindset into engineering and manufacturing. We just quickly go on to the next slide. Just wanted to give you a few sort of key stats really on kind of do you know. So I guess people have different views of and experiences of DHL. But I wanted to share, did you know that we run the largest sequencing centre in Europe for inbound to manufacturing parts, the Jaguar Land Rover in the Midlands. We deliver to point of fit on production lines just in time, just in sequence. We have also fleets of company car vehicles, of press fleet vehicles, of test fleet vehicles that we manage and distribute all around the UK. And we also have a Royal and Diplomatic arm to that as well, which we call our Special Moves division, which when you had the Royal Weddings a few years ago, all of those cars, all the Range Rovers, all the Jaguars were delivered for use in that Royal Wedding. That was all done by the DHL team that sits as part of our business. So some things that I guess you wouldn't necessarily link DHL to, and we also select, negotiate and manage all the transport providers for JCB. So just to give you an idea of that sort of size and scale and complexity. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, please, we'll start getting into some of the real details. So I'll hand over to Andy and really start driving into that first step then of what are the drivers for automation and digitalisation.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So why isn't now the right time for automation and digital? I guess there's an old saying that suggests that the best time to plant a tree was either 20 years ago or now, and I guess that probably holds quite true for what we're talking about today. Sort of why digitalize, why automate? Well, I think it's a common theme across all manufacturing and industry. So you're doing it for safety, quality, cost, delivery, and profit reasons, fundamentally. So there's lots of websites, there's lots of sources of information about the benefits of automation, and I guess most of you are familiar with that already. But I think what people are struggling with at the moment is why do it, and why do it for me, why do it for my business? And it's a personal thing, and I think you really need to view digital as a key enabler to your business and not be sort of overawed by some of the claims that have been made, but also don't miss the potential. I think the thing that caught my attention recently is there's various sort of reports circling about the US military have designed, prototyped and flown a 6th generation fighter with 2 years, taking real advantage of digital tool sets. If anybody's ever come across development cycles in commercial or military aerospace before, you're generally looking at 8 years for a commercial aircraft to first flight, and probably more like 12 to 15 for a military aircraft. So 2 years really is a good benchmark for how digital technologies can assist. Post-COVID, I think the watchword is going to be pivot and the ability to rapidly change both the direction of a business or take opportunities when they arise. And I think that's a key element for us to move on to the next slide. So what should we invest in? Again, if we move on, I'll probably move on again from that because I think I've just talked to it. I think there's a range of things here, and there's probably quite a few missing as well. So many of you again will have heard the term Industry 4.0, which is a collective for digital technologies such as the use of artificial intelligence. So many businesses are using that to automate decision making, to collect data, and more appropriately to gain insights from their data that wouldn't be possible using conventional like the spreadsheet-based analysis or the use of people's intuition. Digital twins, to pick on another one, quite a hot topic, particularly in the academic world, is really what is a digital twin, and if you read the literature, you'll come to the conclusion that it can be anything from a 3D model to a set of sort of interacting simulations that are fed by real-time data that are used to either plan scenarios, look at future operational investments and strategy, or understand when equipment might be coming to the point of failure. Clearly, that's supported by modelling and simulation. Robotics, we just touched on visualization. Again, we'll have a look at some of the tools and techniques later on. But use of augmented reality, particularly in manufacturing and certainly in DHL's terms, is quite prevalent and on the rise. But probably the most important ones is to make sure that everything that you implement works and talks to each other as a system. And a system that is secure. So the one thing that we haven't put but is integral to everything is cybersecurity. If we move on to the next slide, please. So we'll look now at some more specific examples, starting with sort of what you might think around how workspaces in businesses can be optimized and reconfigured. So moving on. So picking up on the theme of digital twins, this is an example that was generated as part of the LCR4 project for a business called GenLab, who are a sort of bespoke manufacturer of industrial heat treatment devices. They were looking to expand the facilities, and we did some work with them to firstly use scanning to produce a digital model of their factory, and then some techniques called, well, statistically based techniques called discrete event simulation to model the flow of product and the effect of buffers and cycle time. And we can use that type of analysis to understand where there are gaps, where additional investment might be useful, or indeed where changing the sequence of operations and changing the layout of the factory can produce benefits in terms of enabling flow or potentially improving quality. So all these changes were analysed in a virtual space, and new layouts were tested using the same techniques. The benefits with that were quite stark. I think they improved their productivity by a significant amount. I think it was over 10%. Certainly, the efficiency of the operations was improved by nearly 20%, and probably not as importantly, they found they didn't need to invest in more factory space to achieve their goals, which is quite an opportunity cost for them. So go on to the next example. Murray, could you talk to us around this, please?
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Andy. So just another example of really bringing that to life, really, that technology and innovation is right here with us. And this is a low-cost Android smartwatch solution that we've been rolling out into a number of our automotive operations. And it's combining smartwatches and ring scanners and then integrating this into a standard warehouse management system. So ultimately, this is to drive performance tracking, and specifically in areas where we've got challenge with Wi-Fi coverage or with network coverage. This just gives an element of control and performance tracking to optimize what the operator is actually doing. Effectively, it's a hand-free device, and it's really driving out efficiency. So where we deployed this with one of our large-scale automotive OEMs, we've seen productivity increases of 20%. And really, that's the first part in this journey. This is effectively a smart device that you can upload any and all apps onto this. So we're looking at this from a health and safety perspective, as well as productivity of our people. and looking to really drive the safety conversations, for example, into the day-to-day working of our operatives. If we just give another example as well on the next slide, we'll jump into smart warehousing as well. So quite a lot of words on here, but I'll just try to summarise up the key messages. So this is a collaboration between DHL, Cisco and Conduce, and it basically gives a virtual window into our operational data. So we're monitoring all the activity that's taking place in our facilities in real time, and then creating that into a graphical representation so you can visually see what's happening at any one point in time in a control room. So how are we doing this? It's basically taking any and all opportunities that we've got to gather data. So that can be from sensors on scanner guns, it can be from the material handling equipment, it can be from the warehouse management system as we're directing work around each of those facilities. So it really gives us valuable insights into peaks in demand, specifically around bottlenecks and linking this in with heat mapping and flows throughout those facilities. And there's a huge health and safety piece for me on this one around hazard perception and hazard areas. And like I said, those areas of bottleneck where you can potentially then get near misses or incidents in the future. So productivity and safety are really key on this one. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, please. So just hand back over to Andy to really consider then how are we increasing that virtual development and remote working and training. Andy.
Thanks, Murray. Can we move on to the next slide then, please? So this is a fairly recent example of work that we undertook jointly with Sellafield Limited. So the active nuclear decommissioning is a complicated and safety critical operation, and as part of that, operators go through fairly rigorous training programs that are often based on the actual equipment, which can be problematic, particularly if the equipment isn't local and training is needed prior to a piece of equipment being delivered. So this piece of work saw us develop, in conjunction with Sellafield, a training simulator. So the lady you can see in the picture is sat on a chair taken from the crane itself, and she would be manipulating the crane in exactly the same way she would if she was sat in the real device. So the first thing to do was create a replicant of the control system. Uniquely with this operation, the operators are remote from the device. They sit in a control room and they would view their actions through a series of cameras. And you can see some virtual representations of the cameras on the top screen. So the objective of this was to train a suite of operators and recertify them prior to them actually having to use the equipment. And to do that, we worked very closely with regulating bodies such as the Office of Nuclear Regulations and ergonomists, human factors people within Sellafield, and the system is now working and actively training people. Some incredible benefits. I'll sort of caveat this before I say it, that they were estimated by Sellafield themselves to have saved something in the order of £20 million on operating costs over the duration of this project. So very, very significant ways of working and very significant ways of improving operations. We move on to the next slide. A slightly smaller project, and again conducted as part of the LCR project, was a mixed reality trainer for a business called Innovus, who, if you look at the left-hand side picture, develop laparoscopic training devices. Slightly ghoulishly, I suppose, the gentleman he's operating there is practicing removing an appendix. So he's using a headset, and the images on the right-hand side are taken from the view that he has in the theatre that he's operating in. So there is some haptic feedback, which means that his hands are feeling some representation of the forces that will be transmitted back through the device as a consequence of the operation. And again, this is a good project. It enabled quite significant expansion of the business and the penetration of new markets for them. But another example of how sort of these assist programs can be really beneficial for businesses. Could move on again, please. Murray.
Yeah, that's an amazing one. That from a medical device perspective, and medical training, that always blows my mind, to be honest, Andy. So from an automated guided vehicles perspective, I mean, AGVs have been around for some time now, specifically in the retail space, but we're really driving these forward now into the automotive manufacturing arena, and we've got two specific locations where we're rolling these out on a wider scale now in the UK. Ultimately, it looks to remove the person from the piece of equipment and allows that person then to focus on more value-added tasks. And hopefully, as we start to return off the back of COVID and into 2021, and volumes start to then rise again, we can start redeploying people onto more of these added value tasks. It's effectively moving full pallets at height, and it uses prism technology rather than wire guided technology to move each of these pieces of equipment around in a safe, secure and productive manner. They're typically modelled on working across 3 shift operations to really drive that value out, and on a 3-shift operation, again, we're seeing upwards of 20% productivity. So the payback on these is really real and valuable at this point. I think that the key thing that's changed here is the way that we are commercialising these types of assets, because they're proven assets now and proven technology. We're investing in these assets so that our customers then don't have to, and then commercialising that on a very flexible basis to obviously show a better benefit on our customers' balance sheet. So yeah, I think that's the key difference really in this type of technology now. It's how we're commercialising those. Next slide, please. If we then just bring in another example of a robot process automation, and increasingly we're seeing more complex and competitive world really building up around us, and we're really getting an unprecedented pressure to deliver high service at the lowest possible cost, and specifically within our functions such as IT, HR, finance, we're kind of plagued with large amounts of detailed, orientated, repetitive tasks that we're looking to substitute with robot process automation. So RPAs for short is an opportunity to save time and cost and really drive efficiency throughout that process. I think more importantly for me as well, it's consistency. Whenever you have human doing key-in activity, there's always that margin forever. But with robot process automation, we've really managed to use that learning and cognitive technology to drive that consistency and standardization. So yeah, a large amounts of repetitive data, specifically through our operational teams and through our finance community. We've managed to automate that process, and we've seen a 50% labour reduction in some examples, specifically within that finance community. So some huge savings that can be gleaned from this, from removing those repetitive tasks. And again, it's not about taking jobs out of the supply chain. This is about making sure that then people are redeployed onto more rewarding and more value-added tasks. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, please. So I'll hand back to Andy and really start to look then at the flexibility to repurpose production and create some new business models.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. So we could move to the next slide, please. So this is a really good example of really the skills and interests of people within the business that you might not know about. So another LCR 4.0 assist, which I think started out originally with a desire to automate some part marking processes within the business, and it quickly bloomed onto the development of an AR-based app, as you can see on the screen with the Buforia labelled on the bottom, using a QR code to produce a map of a valve assembly, which can be disassembled. And quite rapidly, the business sort of realised the potential of this. The valve assembly itself, I think, weighs in the order of 40 kilos, and they experimented with the visualization-based tools that we developed for them to take to both customers and to exhibitions, which proved to be very popular. a chance encounter, really, of one of the IDEs, industrial engagement managers, chatting with one of the employees that revealed a real rabid interest in 3D printing. The chap, I think, had some equipment in his garage that he was very keen on exploiting, and we kind of put the two together to bring to the attention of the business that you've already got some skills in a fairly advanced area, and they moved on to quite a lot of 3D printing work and invested in the equipment themselves, which has enabled them to pivot somewhat from their original business model. So it's a great example of, you may not be aware of the skills and interests of your employees, but if you are, they can be harnessed in ways that you might not expect. So could we move on to the next one, please? Laurie.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andy. So again, just to bring in some more examples. So collaborative robots. So this is a piece of technology that we first trialed out in the US with the life sciences customer, and these are called Locust bots. So they were, just to give some context, they were working through about 15,000 units a day that they needed to pick out of the small parts, sort of shelf pick racking. And they were using handheld devices, typically pushing carts around. So there's a health and safety and an ergonomics design around that. And I think importantly as well, that typically more volume meant more workers. So the more volume then that was coming in, they had to then refill with people in order to complete those tasks. So utilising these robots, we managed to significantly again increase productivity. That's been one of the key measures. Through reducing the walking distances between each one of those activities that needs to be done. So effectively, the robots follow the workers around, and that's why it's a collaborative technology. Again, the key message for me on this one is around the commercialisation of this. So this is a proven technology that we've invested in globally, proven out in the US, now live in the UK, rolling out a significant amount of these into new facility that we're launching next year in the East Midlands Gateway hub, right next to East Midlands Airport. So again, this is technology that is here, it's proven, and we effectively take the risk on those assets and then lease them out to our client base. So again, I think if that's something that's of interest to the team on this call, then I think that's really where this technology is now moving to. Can we just move on to the next slide, please? I'll just give one more example. And I think one of the attendees on the call actually may know this piece of technology really, really well. So this is the Meerkat inventory management tool or piece of technology. So typically, inventory management is quite a time-consuming and manual task. It's typically looking at that check between physical inventory count and systemic checks, and that's done periodically. So it's typically quite an expensive activity that needs to be undertaken. Typically, if we're doing it on an out of hours service, or and that's then charged at a premium, you need to then bring in scissor lifts and lift height equipment. So all of that then adds complexity and cost into that process. So by deploying this particular piece of technology, as you can see, it's got an extendable arm on there that goes up to the top of the racking bays and scans each of those items. It allows activities to be done in periods of downtime and obviously without any human interaction there. So significant increase in the productivity and having the right stock in the right location. We've had 100% elimination then of lost pallets through that process, and in this example, and as you can see there, it's got a real value in terms of the visual factory and safety element. The key thing though is that you've got to have those core labels and specific layouts standardized and in place in line with visual factory in order for this to work. So that becomes the sort of starting baseline. But hopefully just a couple of real life examples of how we're bringing this kind of technology into our workplaces and into real life. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so I'll hand back to Andy now, just to talk then through supply chain transparency, operational predictability, and increasing flexibility.
Thank you. So moving on then. So again, another, and you'll be used to the theme by now, LCR4 project with a business called DriverNet. Now, DriverNet actually a logistics startup company, but they were keen to be able to sort of differentiate their offer around the development of smart resource allocation optimization tools based on, essentially gaining insights from data, as I mentioned before. So I think what we helped them do was incorporate new data feeds to expand the functionality of their products and try and maintain a competitive edge, and also actually start to track their own CO2 emissions, which are becoming increasingly important for everybody. So as a result of the project and the demonstration work we did, which also includes an element of helping them understand their IP and also how to protect it, they won a Northwest Innovation Technology Award and also a further grant from the Department of Transport. And I think they've got some fairly active collaborations with many logistics providers, but I'm not sure if DHL are one of them, Murray. So perhaps I should hand back to you quickly.
Don't worry, Andy. I won't take that personally. Not a problem at all. No, great example. If we could just move on to the next slide, I'll just share again a high-level example of an inventory agent technology that we've been rolling out globally, again to give that transparency and flexibility and management information. So this is effectively analysis of inventory globally across a service logistics network, so aftermarket network. I know there's a lot of detail on that slide, but hopefully it gives you a visual representation again of where all of that inventory is around the world, and leveraging tools such as Power BI to bring that into some really aesthetically pleasing graphics that you can drill into the detail on. So again, it's looking for opportunities then to review stock management strategies and really drive that visibility, and ultimately challenging, have we got the right stock in the right locations to support that customer, and if there's aging stock or if there's obsolete stock there, it gives a really targeted way of managing that, and obviously looking to improve working capital as a result. So again, just some examples of how we're really bringing that to life. So I think the key question out of all of that, and I'm conscious we've bombarded you with a lot of detail and a lot of examples there, but what did we learn? So I think let's take a few minutes then to go back and revisit the poll from the outset of this webinar, and then we'll jump into some Q&A before we wrap up. So Sarah, you able to bring that back up? Okay. So hopefully everyone can see that now on screen. There's definitely some trends in there. So investment in time and purchase is too costly. Yeah, I mean that's a real key one. And also I can't find technology that meets my needs. Worry about switching systems. Okay, yeah, good stuff. So Andy, do you want to give your initial views on that, and then I'll jump into some specifics I think around that. They're good lessons learned.
Oh, I'd love to, but I can't see the results.
Okay, so the highest one of 50%, so 50% of the respondents on this call said investment in time and purchase is too costly was the highest one.
Okay, so I think that the time element is understandable. The way that we approach it is to provide projects like LCR4, LCR Start, and some ones that will be coming up in the future to enable you to look at things with the benefit of people who have expertise in technologies. It's a way of examining your options, understanding the benefits, whilst not spending too much time. And certainly not investing before you've got some real confidence that the benefits that people claim will actually be achieved.
Yeah, and if I build on that, and I'll try to draw a couple of key messages out through the pack around commercial options. I think that the purchase is too costly has been something that we've really had to work through as well with our customers over the last couple of years, and that's why we're really trying to drive on this accelerated digitalization agenda, and a lot of people are trying to understand how that can work for them and their business, and that's why on specific technologies where so we've managed to prove them out, we've got our business comfortable with investing in those technologies so that our customers don't have to. That's really how we're trying to bring that to the forefront and reduce down obviously the amount of time then it takes to work through that business case to source each of those, to configure them and bring them into the workplace. So I'd be more than happy to have a follow-up conversation on some specifics after this. Let me just pull out a couple of the other quick ones as well. So I think the top one that was 40% as well. I guess having visibility of what technology meets my needs, that's a real key one. Andy, have you got a view on that?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's largely based on the same answer I've just given. There's a plethora of technologies, but the best weapon that anybody has with any investment is common sense. So if you understand the needs of your business, you're on a pretty level playing field to start thinking about how those needs can be met. And they won't all be through digital, or they don't all have to be through digital. So there are programs, the programs that we run, and it's not just the University of Liverpool John Moores, and other HEIs in the region are also able to help you. Don't be afraid to come to webinars. It's not it's a drain on your time, but it's useful, and I hope you found this useful. But as long as you know your business and you understand the threats that are coming towards you and the opportunities, I think you're in a pretty good place. You don't have to be an expert in the technologies, but what you do have to be is an expert in how you want your business to develop.
Yeah, I agree, Andy, and I think that nicely links into, I guess, what we're doing here today. I very much say, specifically as we head into 2021 and beyond, that link between academia and industry becomes even more and more important, and then making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel every time. People are then getting visibility to technology that's out there, both in terms of future trends and future technology that's been developed, but importantly, what's in the here and now, what are proven business cases that can be readily adopted and deployed, and really turn that into a reality whilst we build up a longer term roadmap. But yeah, I think that's really key. But no, I'll stop there because I know we've got a little bit more to do in terms of wrap up and then Q&A. And I've also seen a question in the chat box from Paul Jones as well about what advice would you offer to SMEs wanting to embark on this journey. So I think that nicely Paul leads me into the next stage of the wrap up and so what did we learn. So thanks for that link in. Just move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so ultimately, what did we learn? So I just wanted to then consider some of the key takeaways that hopefully we've explored and conveyed then today. So fundamentally, from a DHL perspective, you have to bring people along on the journey, and if you don't bring people along on that journey and get them ingrained into this and part of that winning hearts and minds, then we found that very, very challenging to deploy any of this technology or any of these alternative ways of working. Fundamentally, we really need to start with solid foundations. So I've had so many conversations with customers that are really aspiring to drive innovation and bring in technology, and we don't have standardized platforms in order to build on. Effectively, we're trying to build innovation technology onto a crumbling foundation. Having warehouse management systems in place, for example, good ERP systems, like to create that foundation in order to build upon, rather than trying to just bring technology onto the top. Really focus on less humans doing repetitive tasks, and that is about really making sure that when we're utilising our teams is deploying them on value-added tasks and ultimately tasks that they enjoy and that they get some reward and recognition from as well. But the repetitive tasks, where they can be standardised, where they are repetitive, let's use automation as the means to automate that process. And then the last couple on here is really it's got to fix a problem. It can't just be a shiny new piece of innovation or a piece of technology that is great to look at and looks fantastic on these slides here. It's got to have a real application and got to fix a problem. And ultimately, we're all in business to build up business cases and make sure that the commercials and that the return on investment is there. whether that be tangible investment from a cost-based point of view or from an environmental and sustainability point of view. But also, like I mentioned earlier on, a lot of these are really driving key safety aspects, which is fundamentally important to all of us. And really looking then at small areas do drive huge amounts of value. So it's got to fix a problem, but when we deploy it, really focus on those small areas to then exploit the huge value that can come off the back of that. So all of that for me is what did we learn, and that's then building those building blocks into that next generation of logistics, having a methodical and standardized way of working, building on that strong foundation. That then allows us then to do that make versus buy on technology decision. And is it out there in the market? Is somebody already then using it? Is somebody commercializing it in a way that's attractive to you? Or is it better to implement that and invest in it yourself? And I guess that's the reason for these webinars really today, is to share some of that and share some of those opportunities to increase your balance sheet position as well. Andy, if I just invite you in as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked around the issues and tried to sort of colour them with practical examples. I mean, the other one on the poll question, which Sarah's kindly sent me using another platform, I'm sure why I couldn't see it, is my employees aren't engaged really. And I think that's a really significant aspect of actually all of this. You know, if you've got a disengaged workforce, you're not going to start with solid foundations. People are not going to take ownership, and people will feel threatened by innovation. So I think part of the business planning, part of the strategy development has got to be around the people themselves. We saw a good example from Heaps around the skills of the workforce and how they can be employed in a way that the business didn't understand and didn't realise. So I think the last point, small areas drive huge value, and it's important to understand where that value actually lies. Quite often it can be in human capital, it can be in motivating people to take ownership, to learn skills that are applicable to them, not only in the context of what they do when they're at work, but when they're at home as well.
Great stuff, thanks Andy. So hopefully Paul Jones, that helps to answer that, but by all means if there's any follow-up to that, please ask questions in the chat box. Okay, if we move on to the next slide, please. Andy.
Yeah, so you know, you probably remember me saying this before, but there is help out there. You know, within Liverpool City region, since 2017, there have been active assist programs that businesses can access at no cost and very little risk, only time to them. And I think the results from LCR4 were very impressive in terms of both the feedback that the business gave us and the benefits that they've developed from it. Digital strategy, let's not get too hung up on you need to be an expert in digital to develop a strategy. What you do need to do is understand your business and be receptive to how technologies that you may not be familiar can play a part in you achieving your goals. And that's the role of the digital natives that exist within higher education institutes within the city region and beyond, and a raft of support that is available through the growth platforms. So using the experience of others certainly is very important, and as I've highlighted a few times, that's there. So please take advantage of it. But most of all, really, it's you that drives your business. There are plenty of resources, but fundamentally, if you're willing to engage, then I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the amount of support that you'll get from it. There is a programme currently running within City Region, LCR4 Start, whose specific aim is to help you to do exactly what this slide says, develop a view of your business over the next 3 to 5 years and how some of the digital tools and techniques that exist and may exist in the future can actually play into that. The one important thing I think we find when we've dealt with any SME in the past is the biggest problem that we overcome quite often is making sure that the problem that you think you have is the problem that you really have. And it should go without saying that if you make an investment into something that you really just think is cool and you want it, or you're making an investment to solve a problem that you don't really have, even if you think you have, then pretty much in every case that investment will not pay back and will probably be counterproductive. Okay, could we move on? So, as if by magic, once again, last time I'll say it, LCR4 start. The project's there to do exactly as I've just talked about. Please do engage with it if you're within city region. And we also have, as I mentioned at the start, the second leg of the new institute, the Digital Innovation Facility, which will bring together the world-class research in computer science and electrical engineering and within the University of Liverpool into one laboratory with a focus on the topics you see listed. It will also have the ability for businesses to co-locate in the facility whilst they're working with the academics, and that facility will be open, or the building at least will be completed in early summer next year, and it will be open for business and collaboration moving forward from that. Thank you. I think, is that the last slide? Yeah, pretty much. So now we're into the Q&A.
Okay, so Andy, Murray, thank you for an excellent presentation. So we've got a couple of questions here. What are the challenges integrated with AI in robot process automation?
The general challenge that most people face is getting access to the data that's useful. So a lot of prior planning is needed to understand where your data is coming from and the decisions that you're expecting the AI to actually make, and whether that's realistic in the context of the infrastructure that you have. I think would be the common one that we find. I think if there's anything that's more specific in terms of example, I'd be happy to chat through it offline.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Andy. Are there any more questions from anybody? I can't see anything more in the chat box at the moment. We've still got a few minutes, so if anybody's got a question, please don't be shy, come forward.
Great, thanks, Paul. And just while we're waiting for those to come through, I guess we've left some details there on the screen. So Andy mentioned about don't be shy to reach out. We're here to help and support. So Andy's obviously shared his contact details on there, and details of the virtual engineering centre, and obviously some follow-ups on the LCR4. From a DHL perspective, my details are also on the screen. We have a global trend radar that's developed by our central innovation teams. We have innovation centres in Germany, in Chicago, and in Singapore, and they're looking at typical trends that are 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, and that's quite a useful guide really to some of the supply chain and logistics technologies that are rolling out. And again, by all means, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to have some follow-up conversations.
Okay, that's great. So, Murray, Andy, really informative presentation this morning. Covered a lot of material. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody participating on this morning's webinar has as well. So I'd just like to say, on behalf of the NAA, thanks very much for your time this morning. It was excellent. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for dialing in, everyone. Great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Paul.
And there will be recording available. If you visit the NAA's website and you visit the events section, you'll find a link in a couple of days' time to the recording. So if you have friends or colleagues who couldn't make this presentation, please feel free to signpost them to the recording link. Okay, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.